Hello, it is September 17th, 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? I made that joke last time. So, it is the twice a week vlog this month of the chess club. I'm going to call it a club. Again, I didn't play too many games, but they were fun games. Spoiler alert, I went 1-1 against the two people I played league games against. So I'm down even more rating than I was last week. And I was down in rating the week before. But anyway. I'm only going to go over one game in detail because, as you probably know by now, I didn't write down any of the games because I literally don't have time because it's 10+0. So that kind of sucks. So the first game I played against today was against Wayne. I played against him Saturday, where as black I played a Dutch and ended up losing to a middle game tactic, and then won as white playing a declined Smith Mora with G6 on move 2. So I'm playing him again. I have black again as the first game. It turns into a classical Dutch, and the difference I did this time around was, instead of playing something like bishop b4 to take his knight on c3 to give me more control of e4, in which I want to put a knight there, instead I just kept my bishop on e7 and tried to play for knight a6, knight b4. But then I just hung a fork for free, thinking I would save a pawn, and then I didn't, and then I just lost an exchange in 10 moves. So that was fun. I tried to get counterplay with 2 knights and a queen on the king side, trying to attack his king, which was not castled again for whatever reason. He doesn't like to castle against a touch or something. But yeah, no, that wasn't enough. He had enough counterplay and I just lost. I got mated in... The whole game was probably 30 moves, but whatever. So the second game, where I'm still playing Wayne, I am playing white, is actually the game I'm going to go over, but I'm going to skip ahead and save the analysis for last as I rambled through the rest of the games that I did play. We had a new person show up. I think her name was Eliza. I think that's the pronunciation. We played a Caro Khan. I was black, and it went to this really tough endgame where it was 2 rooks and 4 pawns for each of us, but it was not doubled, it was locked G and H pawns. I had a passed D pawn, but she had a passed B pawn, and we still both had A pawns. It was a very tricky endgame because I already had my pawn up to the 6th rank, or I guess the 3rd rank from black's perspective. She flagged, so she ran out of time, but in the position where she ran out of time, she definitely could have just won 2 pawns for free, and it would have been really, really tricky. Because I have a passed pawn, but she has 2 extra pawns. I don't know. It would have been weird. So then I played Anthony in 2 games. The first game was as black, and he played in English, which he hasn't shown before. And he played this weird double fianchetto setup in the English. I played f5 to respond to c4, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of just moving my pieces around and keeping everything intact. But he thought he had a tactic where he could take one of my pawns near my king to unleash, to create a discovered attack between my queen and his queen. But it didn't work because I had a bishop on f8 that was defending the g7 pawn he just took, and I had a knight on f6 which was defending my queen. So when he moved his knight to reveal the discovered attack, I didn't have to take his queen. His queen was also hanging. So I just took his knight for free, and he moved his queen away because he didn't want to trade after being down a piece. I eventually converted the game. Again, it was another rook endgame, but I had an extra bishop and a pawn. So eventually I locked the bishop and the pawn together, creating a nice little you know, the tight formation where the pawn protects the bishop and the bishop protects the pawn. And eventually I was going to move my rook around to cut off the king and win that. So that was a nice win. The second game, I played e4, he played e6, so again he's going into a French, and I didn't want to play another game of the gambit I play, the Papa Ticulot gambit, I think it's called. So I played an exchange French for some unknown reason to me, and I had no clue what I was doing. I was like, okay, I have a passed d pawn, I guess I'm gonna push it, sure. You know, it was a maneuvering game. I was down a pawn the entire time, and then in time trouble where I had under a minute and he was just cutting into having 1 minute, I just blundered my queen. Like, I moved my rook to capture a pawn because my queen was defending that square, but then I forgot that the queens see each other after I moved the rook, and then I just lost. I was like, okay, yeah, no, wow. But again, time trouble, that kind of happens. So what to say? Okay, rewind. We're playing against Wayne. Let me switch the scene here. We're playing against Wayne. I don't know how to hide the moves, but just don't look at them, okay? So I actually think I have all of the moves in the correct order. Maybe. But as always, the disclaimer is that it's probably not exactly how it went, so don't trust the analysis in the computer on what's happening in the game. Instead of a Sicilian, he played a modern defense, so he played g6. And I was actually looking at the modern defense. I have Gotham Chess's course on the modern, and the first chapter is literally one of the most straightforward but aggressive ways to play against this g6 bishop g7 attack or defense. And it's called the 150 attack. Why is it called 150? God knows why. But he played g6, I played d4, bishop g7, knight c3. I was considering knight f3 to overprotect the pawn, but I also felt like I didn't need to overprotect it. I also figured I want to push my f-pawn later in the game, and putting the knight in front of it would be a little slow and annoying. So I played c3. The game continued e6, which I thought was a strange move because normally in these kinds of hyper-modern openings, such as the modern, you want to push the d-pawn if you're pushing the g-pawn so that this bishop can move around and maybe get some sight on something. So he kind of confused me with e6, but I knew it was not really anything to be afraid of. You know, the queen's not really going to do anything coming out. There's nothing weak in my position. So bishop e3, he plays knight e7. Again, a bit of a strange move because usually you want to play knight f6, but you also want to play knight f6 in conjunction with d6 so that if the knight gets targeted, you move it back to d7. I'm continuing with my plan, queen d2. The whole idea is to create this battery and trade off the dark squared bishop in black's position, which is one of the key defenders, and then create a pawn storm where you're pushing your pawns trying to attack the opponent's king. And it's fine to do that when you castle on the opposite side because those pawns aren't in front of your king and your king isn't weak because of that. So he plays e5 or d5. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure he played d6 first and then a later d5, but the position's going to transpose anyway to whatever it should be. I thought this was a strange move because it locks the center, and in opposite side castling games, you want to lock the center and then push the side, the pawns on the side of the board where your opponent's king is. So I thought this was a mistake. Computer says it's the best move, but sure. So I play e5 to lock the position up. He castles, I long castle, knight d7, and then here is part one of the plan that I have, bishop h6, trying to trade off his bishop. He's never going to take me because I'll take back with the queen, and now my queen is just in his face, and he doesn't really have a good way to kick it out. He'd have to spend two moves going like this, for example, and then he would have to go something like king h8, I'll play f4, and then knight g8, which looks really awkward. You know, in this position, I'd probably play something like Queen h3, start pushing the g pawn, get my bishop and knight into the game, and life goes on. So I take, king takes g7, and then I play f4, gaining space on the king side, trying to push my pawns to attack his king. As someone's texting me. Nope, that's an old text. He plays knight f5, which I thought was a logical move, but also not logical, because this just gives me a target, and it further justifies the strategic plan in this position, which is to push my pawns on the side of the board here. So g5, or sorry, g4. Yeah, and at this point I was feeling really good. I'm brewing an attack. He's not terribly developed on his queen side. His rook is still on the starting position. His bishop is kind of stuck behind the pawn and the knight, or the pawn and the knight. His queen can get into the game, sure, and c5 is kind of starting to encroach onto my position, but there's nothing tangible quite yet here. He takes on c5, or sorry, he takes c5 with, he takes d4 with c5, Jesus. Obviously it's attacking my knight in response to me attacking his knight. And here I calculated a few moves just to make sure things work, and it's what I ended up playing. G takes f5. He takes my knight on c3. I need to move my queen. So I was thinking queen a3 initially, but I looked at the position again and I was like, in my head, and I thought, oh wait, I have an in-between move. Before I need to move my queen, I can push my f-pawn, continue to lock up the center and like somewhat of his side of the board. And I have ideas of bringing my queen to h6 and create a mate with the pawn on f6, queen on h6, and then eventually queen g7 mate. So I played f6, he moved his king, then he played queen e3. Queen e3, because I am not afraid of cb2. Yeah, I'm down a pawn if I do that, but I have what's called an umbrella pawn. And this actually happened in the game, so oops. cb2, king b1. So now, this position calls for black to try to create an attack on my king, but the problem is his pawn is blocking the way to my king, and because of the rules of chess, he can't capture his own pawn to free up or to open up my the defense of my king. So that's kind of where the term umbrella comes from. You're using your opponent's pawn as an umbrella against his own pieces. So his attack becomes harder if he even has the time to attack me. Because clearly I have, you know, I have this pawn wedge here. I am always looking for something like queen h3, queen h6, queen g7 mate. And of course these pieces can quickly get into the game, like h4, h5, knight f3, knight g5. Bishop will come in probably to d3 later. And I thought, okay, my position looks great. His pieces are dumb and stupid. I have a great attack, so let's keep going. He plays a6. I don't remember if he played it in this position or in a different move or at a different point, but he did play this move at some point. And here I played knight f3, trying to get more pieces into the attack. I can do stuff like knight g5 to further pressure the pawns by his king, and maybe in some world I can sacrifice on h7, push my h-pawn to create this giant these two open files. You know, something like that. I knew knight g5 was going to be a strong move, don't need to think about it. He plays h6 to try to prevent me from playing knight g5, but that only hurts his position later, which you'll see in a few moves. I play f5 to try to shred open this the king side. I did look at e takes f5, but that just fails to queen h6, and you're basically gonna get mated in like 2 moves here. Computer says knight f6, sacrificing the knight. I would take back with the pawn. He takes with the queen. But it's still +4. There's giant holes in the king side on his king, and I can still try to look for knight g5 ideas, get my bishop into the game, maybe sack that as well. It's +4, so obviously this is good for me. So after f5, he plays g5, and I saw this move, you know, after I played f5, and it's a mistake to the computer. I had a feeling it was bad, but I didn't have a concrete reason why. My only generic strategic idea from here was sack the knight, he takes back. Well, if he takes back, I have queen h3, and again, I'm threatening stuff like queen h6, queen g7 mate. This pawn becomes really weak, and I can target it with my rook, you know, rook g1. And of course, bishop d3, other rook coming in somewhere, pushing my h-pawn. Like, again, same ideas, but this is how the attack wants to go. So after I sack on g5, he doesn't take it. He actually plays knight takes f6, trying to free up some space and trying to get rid of all of these attackers on the king side and potentially stabilize. I think for a minute here, I decide to play rook g1, because if he doesn't take my knight, I'm going to move my knight and create even more problems by sacking it as well and creating this discovered attack. Again, I still have queen g5 ideas, and I still have, of course, queen h3, queen h6, queen g7. So I figured, okay, I don't need to move my knight really. If he takes it, he just weakens his king even more. And it might actually just be, yeah, it's made in 2 if he takes it because of rook g5. Wherever the king goes, I can just give him a check on h3 and it's going to be mate. So rook g1, he plays king h8 to get out of this potential discovered attack. Which, this is funny here because in the actual game, he played king h7, which is illegal, right? And my knight covers that square. We ended up playing like 2 or 3 more moves when I looked over and I was like, wait, you've been in check. So we had to pause the clock and try to rewind and recreate the position. So there's a little bit of like uncertainty there, but we got basically this position. It was just about the same. The difference is that we started the clocks again with his king already on h8, and it's my turn. So here on g5, I couldn't find a way to like allow this capture and make it work. And I figured, you know, he will be able to defend if he does take my knight, because this pawn can get protected by the rook or even the queen. So I moved my knight away to f3. I didn't like the move. I knew it wasn't the best move, but I was also starting to run low on time. I had about like 2.5 minutes left, and he had about 5. So I just wanted to play a move that doesn't lose, and I know my position is still very good, so I should be fine. He plays bishop d7, trying to activate his bishop, but I'm looking at this position and I'm like, okay, my rook stares down this open G file near your king. You can never move your queen off of the 6th rank here because you need to defend against queen takes h6, which would be checkmate. And I still have my knight and my bishop to come into the party, which I'll figure out how to make those work later. So I played bishop d3, trying to activate my bishop, and I'm kind of protecting the pawn, but not really. There was a trick here, which he did fall for a little later. Rook a d8, knight e5, trying to continue my attack and bring in my knight forward again. He plays rook g8, and then I threw in this h3, but eventually what happened in the position was, I think he just had like a lapse in judgment for a second. So when he took on f5, he took my pawn on f5, I took back with the bishop, and he was supposed to take back with his bishop, and I thought I was going to be fine because I could play something like rook df1. But then he took with the queen. And remember what I said a second ago, you can't take with the queen, or your queen can't get off the 6th rank, because then you blunder mate. So when he played that, I saw that he kind of grimaced and was like, "No, I wasn't supposed to do that." But we were playing chess, so I played Queen H6. I didn't realize that he had Queen H7 to block. So I looked at it, I'm like, ah, shit. I thought I had mate. But then, before I decided to retake his queen, Daniel Naroditsky's voice popped into my head. And what he told me in this weird telekinetic conversation was, if you have a good move, look for a better one. So I thought, okay, I was going to trade queens, trade rooks, so something like this. Take this pawn that I've been using as an umbrella for the longest time, and play this endgame where it's equal, but his king kind of sucks. I can easily cut it off, maybe, and I was just like gonna go on with my life. But as you can see from the computer evaluation, he played Queen H7 to block the check, and I looked for another move, and I saw, oh wait, I just have checkmate. Knight takes F7. His king's under attack. The only thing that could possibly take it would be the queen, but you can't move your queen because my queen will then see the king, and thus we have a nice checkmate. Overall, that was like probably the game of the night. This is probably probably my favorite game that I've played so far among the entire chess league. It's just like exactly the kind of chess I want to play. I just want to throw stuff at you and hope you get checkmated, really. I've played other, obviously, attacking games, but none of them were quite as clean as this one, or what I thought was a clean game. I haven't looked too deeply into the computer analysis, and I'm sure the computer will tell me I'm stupid. But yeah, such is life. So overall today, I won and lost one game against Wayne, and I won and lost one game against Anthony. So even though I have an even score of the games I played overall today, at least the league games, I technically lose rating in this leaderboard because I'm the higher seed. The higher seed doesn't win as many points in an ELO system if they win, or the higher ELO player doesn't win as much if they win, and they also lose more if they lose. You can see this on chess.com, where it's like if you're playing someone like 50 points higher than you, it's like +9 for a win and -7 for a loss, rather than the usual +8, -8. So yeah, even though I won 2 games and lost 2 games, it should be even. Because I'm the top of the leaderboard and I'm playing lower rated players, I'm pretty sure I'm losing 2 to 4 points in terms of my like ELO in the leaderboard. Although I'm not entirely sure, because the people I'm playing against, they're actually like closer in rating to me than previously. Like they're in like the 1030s, so I don't know. But yeah, that was today. It was a good time. I'll be back on Saturday to not remember exactly how the game went and talk about them. So yeah, thanks for watching.